All right, so today on The Power of Our Story, we have Mr. James Corbett, and he is the co-founder of Project ReFit. We are excited to have you. James is like a civilian warrior. He has the heart of a warrior. He goes after everything wholeheartedly, and has such a passion for helping our first responders and our veterans. So it's great to have you. Let's share with us who James Corbett is and a little bit about Project ReFit.
Sure. So I'm really happy that we went through what we went through yesterday, Sarah, because by prepping me for this, because I know who is James. I know what you want from me, so I'm gonna give it out. I'm gonna lay into it. So I am an individual that I grew up in Jersey, South Jersey. I grew up with a father that has really bad anxiety, like debilitating almost. He misses vacations, he works for hours, things like that kind of anxiety. So to the point where I had a dream one day, like when I was younger, I had a dream that I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I was very good. I was able to play pretty well, I should say. And I actually, as I was going through high school, I was also a pretty good wrestler too. I started to really beat myself up because I was always told that it says 1% can only make it and you really can't do it, blah, 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 like all the fear, you gotta have backup plans, a lot of fear, right? So a lot of that was pushed onto me as a young kid. I didn't understand it, but I'm not, by the way, I wanna make really clear, my dad loves me. My dad loves his family. I'm not blaming him for anything. None of that is blame, okay? I wanna make that super clear. He really does try his best, and it's all you can ask from somebody, right? So I am also grateful that I went through what I went through, because that anxiety also built up inside of me, where I was angry with myself and angry with the world. I was just like this angry, violent human being. And I had wrestling, and I had a lot of mixed martial arts under my belt and everything like that. And I would sometimes take that out on people. And that's not okay. And I know that I had to grow as a person, and that really started to hit me when I was going into college and going through college. I recognized I didn't like who I was. I didn't like who I was in my brain. And I was over and tired of being angry all the time. Right. And I was like, what the fuck? This is stupid. Like, I don't like this. I'm smarter than this. I'm do better than this. Like, I sucked my whole way through high school pretty much. And I came out on the other side with a B average. Right. So I had something up here, right? Like, there was something going on where I could actually leverage it and use my head. And I stopped listening to the pressures from the outside world, right? I stopped listening to what I like to call social anxiety. And I just really wanted to focus in on what I really enjoyed and what I really liked. And I found I love America. I always have, right? I've always been into that. A lot of my friends went into the military and are first responders, police officers especially, and specifically. I have a couple firefighter buddies. But at the end of the day, my brother actually was an EMT. And he's now a NP. My brother's he's actually a psych nurse NP, has his doctorate and everything. My brother's brilliant. But anyway, so it's funny that we both ended up in the same area. But one's on the entrepreneur side, one's actually working in the hospitals, front line with the individuals that need the help. So I personally took all of that experience, to get back to the point, all the experience, my life, everything like that. And I started to try to figure out something for myself, to figure out how can I help the world? Because actually, when I was 12 years old, going back in time now, for some reason, I remember the day I was right outside the laundry room, right outside my laundry room and everything. I had this weird epiphany that I wanted to help the world in some way. I wanted to build something that helps the world. I'm not even joking. 12 years old, outside the laundry room, everything. Voorhees, New Jersey, is where it all happened. And I attest that day to being very impactful to my life. So I started to work really hard in trying to figure out what it is, how can I actually help? So I studied a lot of criminology. I studied a lot of marketing and business, and basis of criminology is like a lot of psychology, essentially. And I really started to work on myself. Then I went to Columbia and I studied conflict resolution, negotiation, conflict resolution. I ended up leaving Columbia to start a business because I was so inspired by genocide data, actually, believe it or not, genocide data. Because what I recognized was, wait a second, in communities right now, in America, in our communities, we are very good with political correctness and silencing people. That is not that is not a political ploy, that is real. I was studying this at Columbia. So it's very liberal school and everything like that, which is fine. That's not talking shit, I'm just saying think about this for a second. Political correctness was actually being studied. And what we found was that political correctness, if you're silencing people too often, actually leads to violence. So what I wanted to build was, mass violence, again, genocide data. So what I wanted to do was help law enforcement agencies specifically speak with their constituents on a real life matter. And then that actually ended up leading me into this whole entire spiral of trying to understand communication to the point where, wait a second, we need to start focusing on the thinking about my past, the violence and the silencing of my own voice inside, right? So that's when I started talking to my friends and my very close friends, and we really started to just like checking on each other, right? It wasn't necessarily like a buddy check thing or anything, but then I ended up coming with this crazy idea, which is now Project with Blue Skies, and I got a lot of help from Dan Lombard. He is also co-founder. And I told him about my crazy idea, and he started helping me out with it to make it better. Then my other buddy, Chris Carr, he's a sergeant in the Army. Dan is also Army infantry, and Chris Carr is a sergeant Army infantry as well. And we built this entire thing together that way. And it was all based off of that weird realization that we need to start focusing on the grassroots level. So our whole mission is to combat isolation here at Project ReFit. And quite literally, we're doing that by trying to empower the individual voices. So people ask me, like, oh, what does your app do? What does your nonprofit do? Really, I want you to use our app so you can conduct your buddy checks with your friends. I want you as an individual, every single person on this call, to download it, to use it, get their friends into it, add their best friends into their fire team, and you can stay in touch with each other at the tap of a button. I want other nonprofits to use it. Mentor programs. I talked to Recalibrate. I love to mention Recalibrate because I think they're such a great organization. I have a peer mentor program, right? They can use our app to be more efficient, right? We're a nonprofit, right? We want you to use our stuff and download so we can actually get funding, so we can actually grow from there together, right? So we built this thing to empower the whole community. Of course, we have other programs as well. We have the Radio Check Buddy Check-In program too, which has been super successful. We have a pretty core group of guys that come in, but we have viewers every night. We have tons of viewers every night that come through. They hang out for a few minutes at a time, sometimes for the whole time. And they just come to shoot the shit with us, or, hear us have our thoughts on different topics, and sometimes just laugh, right? Like, we're just in there to be together. And sometimes the jokes can be very military and very first responderish, I guess you could say, which can get dark sometimes, but that's okay because that's your sense of humor and we want that. So anyway, we're very open about that kind of thing. The only stuff that's not allowed on our radio check is racism. We've already banned a person for that, actually. Bigotry, for being those kind of individuals who just don't want to be accepting of others. We don't want you. Right? We don't want that because that means you're not helping yourself. We're going to try to help you maybe find other help and pathways, because I gave a break to the one guy that was racist one time, and then he did it again and tried to take advantage of it. He's gone. That's right. Gone. I'm not going to put up with that at all. You need to help yourself first and foremost, right? Help yourself, and then you can make progress in the future. So that's the thing that we have to keep very serious on. That's also the same rules inside the app. No racism, no bigotry, nothing too offensive, right? We don't want, I know that offensive jokes do come out, right? Some dark humor does come out, but there's a tasteful dark humor, if you will. It sounds weird to say, but it's the truth. But anyway, my motivations, that's another thing, Sarah. You said you wanted me to talk about, what are my motivations? So we know that I have friends and everything like that. We know we have my 12-year-old, when I was a 12-year-old and I had that experience. We know all that stuff now, but there's more to my story that I really want to grow towards. So I also want to go into politics one day. I'm very open about that. I really want to show people that you can build hard solutions for the community, right? And that we can together solve problems actually really effectively. And if we begin to empower each individual voice within the United States, we can actually do a lot of good. That's what we're trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to do as a person. So I am very open about that, and I really would love to do that one day. But I have to build this first. I have another company I'm actually building on the side. I'm opening up more about that because I have a lot of great partners in it now, where we're actually revolutionizing communication between police officers using AI. I came up with a platform that will allow police departments to talk to each other. They can talk to each other like on Slack or Discord, if you know one of those platforms. and talk to each other instantly. And then we're gonna have a whole AI powered brain on the back end that's gonna be matching these guys up instantly, right? It's incredible. It's actually really cool. But anyway, there's a third program within Project ReFit too, I did not mention, that we're actually trying to raise money for right now, which is called the mobile base program. The mobile base program solves the problem of, and combats isolation directly, but it solves the problem of guys who want to isolate themselves so much and they're afraid to go into large crowds. You know, they don't go to concerts anymore, they don't go to sports games anymore, things like that, or local town fairs, because there's a lot of people. So we want to give them a place to go at that concert, at that sports venue, hang out with their brothers and sisters, people they can trust. That's what we're doing. So that's it. That's Project ReFit. That's me. That's, I think, a pretty good summary. So what we're doing. So the Project ReFit Blue Skies app, which is exclusive only to military first responders and active duty military, and the Radio Check Buddy Check-In program and the mobile base. So that's it. Any questions?
James, this is why I like this guy so much. I mean, just his heart, he's hitting all the areas for that gap. And
Yes.
Just that passion for fighting for those who fight for us. Also, was anybody just shocked about how when we silence people, that's what leads to violence? I mean, to actually have that data, that I thought that was fascinating.
I think that makes sense. What surprised me, and if you do think about it, it also makes sense, right? But not as obvious, is that, you know, silencing people, yes, can create violence. Creating a PC language that assumes an understanding for how people want to be represented, you know, does silence people and can cause violence, unrest, right? Because you're not really.
We got to learn. We got to learn how to actually communicate within how we communicate. There's a difference between being a racist asshole and being politically correct, right? There's a difference, and I think that's something that we don't understand. I think human beings, including myself, by the way, I'm putting myself in this category. Us as human beings sometimes have a real hard time communicating. And I think there needs to be So I have this like weird thought and this weird, you could say theory, that you cannot have world peace without understanding, right? Because you have to understand. The only way you have world peace is with understanding. That's it. If you think about it, it's the only way. Because if I'm in a conversation with someone else and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to you, and if you know that I'm not an asshole and I say something that might be a little off-putting, you should speak up and be like, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. This is why this hurt my feelings, whatever. But I understand that you're not an asshole. Just around me, please don't say that. When you start to do that, like blanket things overall, and you're like making people feel dumb, making people feel silent, like that's not okay. That's not okay. We got to learn how to actually communicate with one another on an individual basis. So
it's like when you care enough, when you actually care, you want to know how the other person feels. And just your whole point of, and that is how we learn to understand each other. That is how we can learn to connect and build together. We can understand things that we've never had any experience with. And I love that point, because I think any of us can feel very frustrated if we're suppressed. Any of us, right?
That is correct.
I'm parenting my kids, right? I know if I have suppressed them, I have made really tried to make sure that they have a voice, because I know how frustrating it is to feel suppressed. But I think just hearing, though, that's what you learned in college, that it really actually, I just never connected that dot. It makes total sense. But I really appreciated you articulating that, and everything that you're doing, I feel like is fighting for people to have a voice. And I want
everyone to have a voice. That's right. And you know what? Somebody pointed this out to me during a podcast recently. Actually, I didn't recognize it at all. But, you know, I have not really opened up about like my upbringing and things like that until very recently, by the way. So he said to me, he's like, oh, so you felt like you weren't heard by your like parents or whatever, by your dad or whatever. And I was like, Oh my. All right, therapist. This is just a podcast, but you need to calm down over there right now. But he's 100% correct. Like 100%. Like that's exactly right. And I want other people to never feel that way because I know what it's like to feel like you're not being heard, right? To feel that's why I was so angry. I was literally just so angry because I feel like I wasn't actually being heard. And I don't like it when people feel like I'm not even listening to them sometimes. And sometimes I don't, by the way, because I'm human and I have ADHD and all this other crazy shit. But like I make sure that I want that person to know they're being heard, right? Anthony, I mean, like you've been on the radio checks before. You've probably heard we together have actually saved lives. Anthony and I right here, we've literally on our radio check program, by the way, saved lives together. Like it's pretty incredible. And in the way we do it is literally letting the person talk.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking speak to us, brother. Come on, speak to us, sister. Whoever you are, speak. Here, we will hear you the whole time. And then when you get everything off your chest, we're not afraid to ask very direct questions like, are you going to kill yourself? Are you going to harm yourself? Anybody can do those things, right? If they answer yes, we will immediately get them to the appropriate measures, right? Or if they say no, right, we'll actually follow up with them, stay in touch with them. Multiple people that we knew that we saved their life are now in therapy because of that, right? Because we made them promise. And by the way, there's a new pledge that I just heard of called the Spartan Pledge by the Gallant Few. I probably shouldn't be saying too much, but like I want to partner with them. I'll say that. I think that's safe to say. I believe we will be partnering soon, but the Spartan Pledge is exactly what Anthony and I have done together, actually on our radio check before, which is you have to make sure that you call your buddy before you kill yourself. Call a friend. You must get in contact and talk with a friend, right? And what that does is that makes the person call somebody, right? Makes them call somebody. They're pledging to it, right? Signing their name, right? That kind of thing is very powerful. And we're trying to make sure that people understand we cannot ignore the friends anymore, right? That friend piece, the best analogy I came up with, I think, to describe what Project ReFit is doing and what Project ReFit has built the tools for. You have your gym trainer and you have your gym partner, okay? Your gym trainer is your psychologist, your therapist, your psychiatrist, right? Those people have a lot of tools. Everybody knows about them, right? But what about the gym partners? The very important piece when you're working out is you have to have a gym partner sometimes to keep you accountable. Not everybody is able to be hold themselves accountable, right? So what we're doing is we're building the tools for the gym partners to stay in touch more, to actually reach out to each other, to actually help each other out more, to conduct their buddy checks at literally the tap of a button. That's what we're doing.
That's great. I have never heard that articulated like that with kind of the training that I had in, addiction and suicide and all that sort of thing. Before you kill yourself, call a friend. Like if
called the Spartan Pledge. Check that out.
Spartan Pledge. Awesome. If people really
by Gallant Few. I love those dudes. They're a bunch of Rangers. The one guy we spoke with today actually knows Command Sergeant Major Martin Gunny Barreras, I should say. He's actually who we dedicated our Blue Skies app to. The name Blue Skies is dedicated to him. So he was killed May 13, died of wounds, May 13, 2014. And the guy that we spoke with today from Gallant Few, that was actually his head or top ranger. I forget what it's called. I'm a civilian. Want to make that really clear. I forget what that's called. But don't crucify me for that, boys and women as well. I know that there's female rangers as well now. So.
James, I love what you said about inside of your app, how you're kind of moderating it, and that like the racism is just not allowed. And
correct.
One of the things that I really like to talk with people about, and I hear you doing that in this conversation today, and I love it, is, when you sign up to be a veteran or a first responder or a police officer, what you're kind of trained to do is to hold that thin line between right and wrong and evil, right? And so what comes very complex, so I served on a task force for 10 years, and I was commissioned to be there by the governor. And my job was to remind all 60 people around that table that behind every number and statistic was a life.
Well, what everyone wanted me to do was to
Amen.
only remind them when it was a life of a victim. When I would remind people that on that left side, so the person, like, let's say a DUI offender, right? When I would remind that person that that DUI offender was also a life, and that at home he had maybe a son or a wife that needed him to be rehabilitated, they didn't like it when I would remind them of that. And so what becomes really complex is, how do we define evil versus brokenness? See, so what happens when the firefighter shows up on a scene and a 3-year-old is killed, right?
Mm.
And in his brokenness, he starts drinking and driving.
Mm.
Now, because we know the story, we look at that firefighter and we look at that story and we say, shit, this is a broken man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we do? We don't call him evil. We look at him and we say, man, what can we do to help our buddy, right? And so we move him out of that evil category. But do you know what? Because he's always showed up on the scene and all of that was always evil, right? Until all of a sudden we ourselves find ourselves in those categories that we've always called evil. And that's when things really get tough, right? And that's what I see happening today, is I see each side really calling each other evil. And I love what you're saying, which is like, we got to stop with that, because I absolutely am just like Sarah. I would love to sit down with anyone who has a different view than me. And I would love to hear why. I want to hear your story. I want to hear where you came from. I want to do it with graciousness and kindness and probably drop an F-bomb, right?
Yeah, let's fucking go.
Right? Let's fucking go, right?
That's
But
right, baby.
I hold out evil, okay? And so that's what I ask people to do, is like, can we define what is really evil? See, to me, evil is way different than brokenness. Evil is way different than struggling. And here, it's so simple for me. Intention. Okay, so here's my story. A drunk driver gets in a car. He's driving down the road and he kills my husband and daughter. T-bones them. T-bones the driver's side of our car, kills them instantly. My other 2 daughters survive, right? But do you know what that man did? When he was getting sentenced to his 24 years in prison, he took his sentence. Okay? Do you know how many offenders? See, now if you're a police officer, you know this shit. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a police officer, do you know how many offenders try to wiggle their way out of it? Never look at the person and tell them they're sorry. They don't accept their plea, or, you know, their what they've been given, right? They try to
Correct.
get it down to the less amount that they can.
Yeah.
I went on to advocate for that man in prison, and he's a free man now today. Because what I saw on that day was a man who was broken, a man who was struggling and did not wake up that day with the intent to kill people.
That's right.
Now, our police officers and our veterans, you guys know how to define evil, right? You see evil coming, trying to come into our country. You see people with intent breaking in with intent to harm, right?
Mm. Mm.
And so that's the conversations to me where it's like, that's why we're so divided, because it's so easy to point a finger and say, you know what, that's evil.
Yep.
And until we can settle that issue, which is like, no, actually, I'm just different than you, and that's okay. And to me, that's that hot topic button that I get on, because I have every right to raise a victim card, right? But you don't see me do that. You see me looking out and saying, here's a man with no intent. And so, you know, I advocated for him in prison and he's free.
So if I can, I'm going to respond to that. That's actually, and it's not directly about the story because that's a great story. That's actually really awesome that you did that, by the way, really awesome. I think that actually goes into something that's maybe not even on topic of this whole conversation, but the prison reform, right? And like criminal justice reform in general. I think that there's something to be said about people who wake up with intent. Where's the intent, right? Like this guy is broken, like alcohol. And we look at alcoholics and drug addicts and things like that. Like, oh, they're just terrible people, right? I don't know about evil, but like they're just terrible people. They're fuck ups, blah, 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 and all this other crazy shit. But if you look at countries where they actually put into effect really effective, if they put into play, I should say, really effective reform, meaning they want to take that person and help them and rehabilitate them and show them therapy, show them a true way to living. You don't know that person's story. You're totally right. You don't know that guy's story, where he came from. I can't tell you how many veterans now that I've talked to that came in. There's one story in particular. There's a veteran that came in without sharing any names or even branch or anything like that. Well, I can do that. That's fine. So he was a Marine. He was referred to us by a police officer on the street because a police officer they were called out for a domestic dispute. And the guy didn't do anything yet, right? He didn't do anything yet. And the police officer was like, hey, I can see you're angry as shit. Here's a card to Project ReFit. They're live right now. Go message their page and go on and hang out with them right now, right? So what we did, we talked to that guy, all this other stuff. He's in therapy and everything like that now, has a job, all that stuff. It's been a few months now, right? The reason why it was so crucial to get him in here is because we treated him like a person.
Yep.
We listened to him. We didn't blame him. We didn't make him feel like shit for absolutely fucking up. When you're angry, when you're mad, you make bad decisions, for sure. Right. For sure, because you're emotional, all that stuff. By the way, nothing wrong with having emotions and being angry. It's how you are angry. It's how you are mad. It's what you do with it, yep. Right? It's how you cope with that emotion. And you need to learn how to train that emotion and learn how to use that emotion, right? So for us, the way I look at it, back to the conversation, Jennifer, you and I, we're talking about something I think goes deeper than just like evil or anything like that. I think there's like that gray area that we need to begin to operate more inside of, between good and evil and everything like that. Good and evil is a little shit. I don't like that. I don't like that terminology. There's people in my life who probably from my past who are like, oh, fuck James. You know what I mean? That's fine. That's okay. Right. Because they remember a person that probably was angry and wasn't the nicest person and all that other stuff. Right. But that's okay. I'm not that way anymore. I'll beat myself up over who I was, it's who I am now. What are my motivations? What am I going towards now? Right. And I think a lot of veterans do the same thing. A lot of people do the same thing. A lot of first responders do the same things. Right. They look too much into the past all the time and they beat themselves up for what they did in the past or what happened in the past and trying to change it. And you can never do that. Right. The only thing you can do is just move forward, embrace what happened or embrace the suck. Right. And move forward. And I think that's a really important thing. And sometimes you need help to do that. And that's okay. That's what therapists come in, where trained professionals come into play. And that's what we like to remind people of all of the time. So something to the bully analogy, right? The bully in high school or in grammar school or whatever is somebody that's tortured at home in their own head. Right? That's somebody that's sad and upset and they're trying to put themselves above somebody else because they're not happy. Right? So we need to stop like prosecuting the bully necessarily and start finding a way to help the bully in an effective manner. You have to be clear and direct. Like, dude, this is not okay what you're doing. And if the bully analogy leads into going to jail, for sure, you're in jail now. You do the time. However, why don't we help you out effectively while you're in there so you can come out a productive person in society? Because right now, one of the analogies that we had when we were studying criminology and such was you go into jail with like an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, and you come out with a bachelor's or a master's or a doctorate in crime. That is a system that's feeding itself. That's not a system that's putting itself out of business, right? You're actually creating a system to feed itself at that point. We can't be doing that. That's not effective for helping anyone. That's not effective for society. That's actually making America lose money overall. Sure, the prison system's blowing up. What about small businesses? What about like all the other, that whole system is just broken. I'm just going to jump off that soapbox.
And so again,
but anyway, You good,
Yeah.
Jennifer? I heard you.
No, I just wanted to say I really like what you're doing though inside of the app, because
Yeah.
again, you are providing that place, and that's what I like, is you are saying, hey, look, you can come in, be heard, share your story, right? But this is the one card that you can't pull out in here, which is that like whole racist, bigotry, right? It's like, nope, you're out.
Correct.
And so I love that, because, even looking at the screen today, not everyone on this screen drops F-bombs, right? Some people do.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying I'm one of those, but right, here's the thing. If I'm going to come into your app and start judging you and saying, you know what, you shouldn't drop F-bombs. What?
Yeah,
Right?
no, of course you can.
So-
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's about the willing people coming together with the content
that.
of really helping. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not one of those that drops F-bombs. Like my son happens to be on the screen. He could attest to that. But I love what y'all are doing. I've found that with veterans, that's just part of the language. And I see beyond that, of course, because we have the same goal. We have the same heart. And I love what you're saying too about the goal being rehabilitation for those who are willing.
Yes.
We don't know what their stories are. We don't know where they've come from. We don't know what drove them to drink. I mean, I've got people coming on this call that the stories are they're painful, and somehow they were able to rise above to share their stories to help the other people, that maybe made mistakes or gone on the wrong lane. So I love this conversation. I think it's really nailing it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree. I wanted to actually cover profanity real fast and how awesome it is sometimes. So General Patton said, you can't run an army without profanity, and it has to be eloquent profanity. An army without profanity couldn't fight its way out of a piss-soaked paper bag. So hear me out real fast. Take that quote and think about what kind of fight that we're in right now, right? I just explained this to somebody the other day. I was like, listen, I don't care what you say. This whole thing about the suicide, epidemic and problem and issue, killing hundreds of thousands of veterans and hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people in general, that means you're in a war. The only way you're going to be able to effectively fight that war is when you begin to get an army together, and you have to get an army together and you have to give them tools to the everyday man to make them powerful enough to fight for each other. We're not doing that, right? That's what we did. That's what we did over here at Project ReFit. We're trying to create a tool and weapons, if you will, to empower each individual inside of this army. So somebody said to us recently, they're like, you guys are the ReFit revolution. You guys are a movement. You guys aren't doing anything but creating an actual movement and revolution in this, because you actually are bringing tools to the table. It's not awareness. We're not about awareness. Awareness is nothing, right? Awareness without effective action and without effective tools is absolutely nothing. It's just something raising money and putting it out there. Breast cancer awareness doesn't cause breast cancer, right? But suicide awareness can cause, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm listening to you, and I didn't realize I was unmuted. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Say what you
Okay,
said,
here, Karen.
It was so funny. I am so sorry. I'm going to wait till you finish, and then I want to say something. My apologies.
No, you're totally okay. So breast cancer awareness doesn't cause breast cancer, but it can actually teach somebody how to prevent it. I think that's what you're saying, correct, Karen? Yeah, cool. So when it comes to suicide awareness, there's actually something called copycat suicides, where if you begin to talk about suicide so much, it becomes normalized and the person will kill themselves. So I think we need to stop talking about it so much and start teaching people and giving people actual tools to effectively combat it with each other, right? Where you can actually have a conversation with your buddy because you're doing it at the tap of a button, checking in on them, like on the Project ReFit app, right? Again, breast cancer awareness, 0% chance of it actually causing breast cancer. What it can do is what Karen said, was it can actually prevent it, right? Suicide awareness in some cases is actually doing a disservice. And I think we need to start having that conversation more personally. But anyway.
So I just want to say something now that I know that I'm unmuted. Sorry about that. I was actively listening, not realizing you were listening to me. So real quick, I love Jennifer, how you you kind of piggybacked off of what James was saying when we talk about the danger of labeling, you know, and he was talking about how we kind of, we use the danger of a PC language where we label, and then what we lose track of, like, and also labels in these terms, they carry with them a definition that gets perverted too. The more it's used and the more people adopt it, and then, you know, and that's what contributes to misunderstanding. And so, and then I love also, Jennifer, you talking about cursing, and, you know, that there's, and then James, you talking about how everybody kind of communicates in their own way. And what's more important is working to understand, which is something that Jeffrey also put in the chat, which I really dug, the lazy Susan technique, trying to appreciate other people's perspectives. And really it's all about, you know, understanding that, you know, depending on where you're from and how, like, you communicate differently, but it doesn't mean you can't communicate with one another. It's just a matter of attempting to understand. Some people use an F-bomb, for instance, some people don't. But the labels are dangerous. And then the label of evil versus, you know, the brokenness that you were talking about, Jennifer. I loved, and, like, you know, and I guess what I'm saying is I'm a big fan of this conversation. Right? So,
yeah. I mean, me too.
I dig it. And all value. Oh, sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to say, James, like, I haven't met you yet, but I am so stoked for everything that you're doing. And I mean, it's actually hilarious because if you go to my website, I have a communication course and it's called Speak and Be Heard.
Cool. That's awesome.
So I'm just saying, like, you know, it's awesome to see you turn all of these experiences and really push it forward into this very tangible app that's just saving lives and connecting. So I just, hats off to you for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot, honestly. If you would like, I would like to take your program, if you want to put it into our app as a resource. Like Sarah, she's actually she's a resource in our app, right? So I put her into the dashboard so that she actually can maybe get some more veterans to join in with this conversation and join in anytime that they like and hear other stories and go to her YouTube channel once that's launched. Is it launched yet? It is launched, right? Your YouTube, Sarah?
Yes, it's
cool.
unlisted now, but we're actually on another coffee group that Jeff is co-piloting with, the Angels 14. Somebody on that group is helping me with the website, and then we're going to have everything, all the YouTube channel, you know, for everybody. So yeah, we're getting it together in that area.
Good. Send that to me once all those links are up, and I'm going to put it right in there so we can get you more people potentially as we get more downloads. So
James, you know what? I think you should.
Can I jump in real quick?
Before I'll send you the YouTube for Jennifer. She came on and she shared her story. It was so powerful. Sorry, go ahead, Tiffany.
Cool.
I was just gonna say, before my battery dies, because I'm on my phone here. I love this conversation, and man, look, John, we gotta.
And she was never heard from again.
I think that her phone might have died. Yeah.
No, it definitely
Bummer.
That stinks.
Bummer.
Right before she told us the most important thing.
I know, dang it.
I really like the fact too, I just want to make really clear something actually. I love hearing so much because if you listen to people talk about communication, the number one thing that you'll hear, because I love to listen really intently and close when I listen to people, right? And I hear the word understanding coming out all the time. And I've been hearing that for years. So like when I hear that word understanding, that's why I say something as simple as you cannot have world peace without understanding.
Oh, I agree with you.
You cannot. Because because we're human beings, you have to understand where the other person's coming from. And to truly understand someone, you have to take the time to listen to them, which is why teaching effective communication skills in schools and like teaching things to kids when they're young about emotions and trying to teach them what emotions are, what they mean, and how to work with them, I think will make a better, more emotionally intelligent human. Some people say, oh, it's going to make you soft. I would like to make an argument to you, the person that thinks that, if you are listening to this and continue to. First off, I applaud you for continuing to listen to this because we're talking about emotion. It means that you're probably curious. But nonetheless, And I mean that very seriously. So anyway, nonetheless, when it comes to understanding and emotions, I think that there's something to be said between the difference of physical mental toughness and emotional mental toughness. They are not mutually exclusive, right? To create a soft human, to me, means someone who can't run for 25 miles and they quit after like a quarter mile because they're like, oh, I'm tired, right? That's a physical thing, right? Like they might not be able to. I think that we have to really begin to break down that you can be a Ranger, Navy SEAL, infantryman. It doesn't matter at all. You don't have to be any. You could be behind. You could be bullets don't fly without supply. What is it called? You can be a pogue and still have some kind of actual, like that's what I know of as. I'm a civilian. I'm a civvy. Yeah. So I want to make really clear that like you can have a tough time emotionally and be okay. And still, the thing that you need to do as a mentally tough person in your head is to be able to open up about it and talk to somebody about what's going on, right? There is an effective way to actually open up and do that without weakness, right? It's really strong to do that, but it's also super strong to be able to sit there and run for 25 miles straight, even when you're in a ton of pain and you're just separating out the pain, right? The physical pain, and being mentally strong enough to push through that too. There's two separate things. Those are two separate things. They are not mutually exclusive, and we need to have that conversation more often. 100%.
So I think there's definitely overlap, right?
For sure.
Yeah, but I do want to say this. I have a really close friend. His name's JC Glick. He's a retired soft Ranger dude who talks about vulnerability a lot. He's written a couple books. Really fucking awesome. Amazing human being. And there's something that he and I talk frequently, and we talk about this kind of thing. And one of the things that he talked about that was aired recently, actually, I'll put the link in here, but he talks about vulnerability and how, and it's something a lot of us in the groups that we find ourselves in. A lot of the folks on this call are in other groups, and we see each other and we talk about this a lot, right? The importance of it. But what I love is that he puts it in a way. He says, hey, listen, vulnerability is an absolute, it's a necessary strength, right? And if you are afraid of being vulnerable, what that means is that what it is you fear putting yourself out there because someone else might hurt you, right? It's about putting yourself in an uncomfortable position and being okay with the outcome, right? Being comfortable here. When you push against something, when you resist or you're angry in some way, that's resistance. And that's protecting something here because you're afraid somebody's going to hurt you. And that is a key strength to have. And so I think the way that we talk about vulnerability, I think if we shift it in a way to kind of talk about it in that way, I think I don't want to say it's more appealing, but those people who are so afraid of it, I think, or they don't understand it. I think it puts it maybe in a way that's maybe a little more understood. I'm going to put the link to this in the comments. It's he was interviewed recently for it was actually for GNC for one of their things recently, and I thought this was a really fucking powerful excerpt. But anyway,
Karen, one of the toughest things about vulnerability. So my story. I was young and battling suicidal ideation, right? I go in, walk in, and I get help. I had no idea that they would come back and then label me unfit for doing the right thing, right? Well, I talk about this in my book because 15 years later, I'm writing my book. And I'm thinking about all of the pressure, and all of a sudden, in the midst of writing my book, this was 3 years ago, okay? I started to battle with thoughts of suicide, which I hadn't battled for 15 years. Do you know what I discovered? I realized 15 years later, I was afraid of being vulnerable about those thoughts of suicide, not because I thought anything less of myself. Like, I knew that those thoughts didn't define me anymore, right? Like, I'd already worked through all that. I was afraid that someone would use those thoughts and say that I could no longer do my job. And that's the tough part about being vulnerable.
Yeah.
See, the first time around, they did use my vulnerability and labeled me unfit. And so the second time around, I was like, damn, do I want to put this in my book? Because if someone comes to me and says, oh, Jennifer's writing a book and she's having thoughts of suicide again, oh, I'm not going to hire her to come speak. If you're going to take my vulnerability and make it so that I can no longer do my job, then I don't want to tell you, right? And that was the scariest thing for me, you guys, was to put that in my book. But do you know how many officers reach out to me from chapter 15 in my book?
That's a great point, Jennifer. That is huge right there. I wonder how many people that could save if that were normalized. Is that the right term? Normalized? I mean,
that's why I love what James is doing, because that's exactly what James says.
Yes.
He's like, someone's struggling with anger or they're blowing their fuse, and he provides this place for them to come in. This is the safe place to come in. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the general, whether you're the pastor, or whoever you are, right? You can provide that place to talk, and then you're helping them. You know, you're saying, hey, dude, go get the help, or whatever that is, that next step needs to be, right? Instead of your vulnerability being used against you. And you guys all kind of know AA, right? Like, the whole premise is like, if you go to AA, you don't tell anybody you saw so-and-so in AA. You guys all know what I'm talking about, right?
I know it's a tight culture. Yeah, totally.
Right. It's like, you know what? If you see someone in there that you didn't expect to see in AA, oh, you don't tell somebody else that you saw them in AA. That's just a given, right? And that's kind of what I really hope happens with your app, James, is like, someone can show up in there and be the authentic self and be vulnerable, and that nobody else, you know, goes back and says, oh, well, I heard so-and-so chief from, you know, Adams County, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
100%. It's, that's actually, so I want to touch on, I want to touch on a couple of things actually with that, because that's a great point. It's all anonymous, right? It says it's as open as you want it to be, because you create a username and all that stuff in there, right? And the only people that are really going to know that you're using the app are the friends that you invite in, because they're going to know you because you're on the fire team with that person, you know? So it's a very close-knit segment that way. We also are trying to empower the people, the individual, again, friends, because we're going to be offering resources inside the app right there at your fingertips. So you can become almost like a case manager in a way to help your buddy go get help, right? Oh, dude, have you tried this resource? Like, I just saw this on the ReFit app. Like, let's just try this out, man, and help them that way too. So there's tons of different things that we're trying to really help our entire base do together to really empower each person's voice that way, to reach the point where they understand that, you know, again, going back to what I was saying before, like the physical mentality, like the physical toughness is a different kind of thing from, like, not completely different, because you need to be mentally tough in general, but the mental toughness of something you're emotionally going through there's definitely a difference there, right? And we need to start talking about that. That's that vulnerability that Karen brought up, because the vulnerability is so important, actually. Such a great piece, because vulnerability is emotionally difficult to do, 100%. And it's okay to be there too. It's okay to get through that point and to become vulnerable. That was a great testament, Jennifer. I really appreciated that a lot, actually.
Can I say something? I have to hop off, and I just want to say that, Jennifer, you're completely right. I mean, it doesn't make it, we can be comfortable communicating that stuff, but the way it's received is equally important.
Yeah.
You know, and what's done with that, and is it weaponized against you, you know? And that's absolutely shitty. And we've talked about this before, and I know your story, Jennifer. I'm fucking floored all the time by your courage. And but because I too have had that, You know, I've had, hell, I mean, I have it with my family. You know, my family is absolutely terrible, right? They don't, and I say that they don't know how to handle that. And they smack it down whenever it happens. And it's really just, you know, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm leading. I have to put myself out there so they know it's okay. And it invites others, invites them into the space. But sometimes I'm not going to tell you that I'm invincible and it doesn't bother me. Right. There are times when it really does. But I think you're right. And like what we're talking about is a cultural shift. And James, what you're doing is contributing to that cultural shift. I love that you're calling it, honestly, I love that you're calling it a movement.
Yeah. And Sarah, again, like I just want to tell you, you know, how much I appreciate you because, you know, I was so vulnerable with you when I said to you, I don't normally talk to people because I've had them come back and use, you know, my vulnerability against me. And so thank you for being someone in my life that I can come to and be vulnerable, right? And, you know, so yeah, just this whole collaboration, you guys, is just truly, it is such a blessing to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I just want to say, and I want to give credit to the guy that actually called it a movement. And it's to my man, Raul Herrera from Backyard Sports. He's a Navy veteran. I got to give him a shout. So he created a whole video for us talking about it. He's like, man, this has been a problem since 1776. He's like, you boys are coming up with an actual solution to this shit. He's like, I love it. You boys are a refit revolution. Let's go. It's a movement. You guys are a beacon of hope. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about, baby. So he went all in, and it was really great to see. And the thing that I'm really happy that we're beginning to see is a lot of men, right? There's a lot of men that are beginning to open up and everything like that. And I think there's been a lot of great women who have showed us how to do that. Right. I mean that very seriously. I don't mean to break it off into two, but I mean that in a very serious way, in a very complimentary actually way. It's something that I think in our society, we need to stop telling men that they need to be silent all the time. It's doing so much harm. I think Emma Watson actually is someone that stands up for men to actually begin to open up more. I believe that I read that somewhere. I saw that somewhere actually. I don't know why that just came into my head again. I was like, damn, Emma Watson, you know, she's on our side. So like, it's really cool to see that. And I hope more men can do that because it'll help us. I know it helped me. I was a young, violent, angry human being when I was younger. And I am not that way anymore, right? Like, for sure. Like, I mean, I like to go, and I haven't done jujitsu in a little while now, but I love jujitsu. I love martial. I love wrestling. Like, I still love the act of like even practicing and training in violence. But like the actual act of it in terms of like outside of a gym, come on, man. There's no room for that place. There's no place in here for hate at all. Use it like yoga. You know what I mean? That we call jujitsu murder yoga. So it's like, it's literally because you're learning how to actually defend yourself and take a person's life, but at the same time, you're relaxing yourself. And I think it'd be a great thing for a lot of veterans to get into actually. And Warrior's next adventure actually, Nicholas, I forget his last name right now. He'll kill me. No, he won't. He's a really cool guy. But Warrior's next adventure, he does a lot of stuff with BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he's a veteran himself. He's a combat vet. He's trying to get people into it and moving them through. We got to help guys find their tribes. That's all I'm saying. I think a lot of veterans, especially combat veterans, if you want to continue to feel, you know, that power a little bit that you get from the act of overcoming another, go into jiu-jitsu 100%. It'll also humble you. That's another thing too, because you'll get choked out by the skinniest ass person in that room, and you're gonna be like, oh wait, I'm not all that. And it's a wonderful thing. So it's a great thing, and I really recommend to any veteran actually, and first responder, police officers, go train jujitsu, man. Come on now, it's gonna be great for you, especially for you actually. I wish all police officers had more training in jujitsu actually, and had more training in general. I wish they had more training in general actually. I think it would save a lot of lives, but including their own, and be safer for their constituents that they serve. But anyway, off of that again, I'm done.
Well, are you sure, James? Take a breath really quick.
It's a pleasure to meet you, James. I was actually incredibly sick this week, went into the ER, and I've been tested for COVID. And so that's why I chose not to come on screen today. But I really wanted to meet you.
Okay.
Someone invited me today and said, Jen, you've got to come meet this guy. So it's been an honor to meet you, James, and I am behind you all.
It's been an honor to meet you too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
What you're
What's
doing,
up, Tiffany?
Jennifer.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I've been trying like for an hour to say something, and then my battery died, and then I found out I was muted, and I had not muted myself. I was like, "What in the world?"
I'm sorry.
It's all right, Tiffany. You're here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here now at the end. But there was a couple things that really stuck out, and I can't remember them all right now.
It's okay. Take your time.
No, you don't want me to do that because then I'll run my mouth. Jennifer will tell you I could talk forever and ever and just not like I circular breathe and talk or something.
All right. Well, don't take your time.
All right, good. Let me hurry up then. With the vulnerability thing, the bulk of my life, I kept everything bottled in. And I distinctly remember a point where I started to say, okay, you know, I'm going to take that chance to be vulnerable with other people, knowing that I'm taking that not only to connect with other people to help and be helped, but I'm also taking a chance of getting hurt too. So I knew that I was doing that, but to me, it's the positive connections that I've made from being vulnerable have been well worth the times that I've gotten hurt by being vulnerable.
Yep.
So yeah, I've gotten hurt. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But the positive things that have come out of it from being vulnerable has made it all well worth it.
That's right.
There's even been that fear of being judged by other people. And then even just March of last year, I self-admitted to the psych ward at the VA in Kentucky. And that was one of the hardest decisions that I had made because I just thought about all the stigmas of going into a psych ward and, oh, you're crazy, you're messed up, you're loopy, whatever judgment that people want to put out there. But again, like being vulnerable, it was well worth it because I got something out of it and there's no shame in it. But I thought that there was going to be a lot of shame tagged with being, self-admitting because I never in my life thought that I'd be contemplating suicide, but I was. And so it's just the more, I think for me, the more vulnerable I find myself becoming and the more I open up to other people, the better things turn out.
Yeah.
That's right. I agree with you.
Well,
It's actually awesome. Great testament.
yeah, I'm going to hang on, guys. I'm just going to turn off the recording. So James, thank you so much. This was amazing. You are a man who has a powerful voice for vulnerability, and for them to see you because you do come in strength. You are a great voice for this. So
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that.